For 7 years, my entire life revolved around the company where I worked. My name is Rachel Morgan, and if you asked anyone in my department, they'd tell you the same thing. I was the person who never stopped. The one who stayed long after the lights went out. The one who answered emails at midnight. Who smoothed over angry clients. Who trained new hires until they found their footing. I wasn't just doing it for a paycheck. I believed in my job. I believed in the team we had built. I believed that if you worked hard, stayed loyal, and proved yourself again and again, the rewards would come. Promotions, recognition, maybe even a seat at the leadership table one day. And for a while, I thought I was on the right track. My manager, Thomas Reed, wasn't warm or effusive, but he wasn't blind either. He knew I delivered results. Quarterly reviews always highlighted my consistency and dedication. He'd hint at bigger opportunities down the road, telling me to be patient. I was patient. I was loyal. Then his nephew, Evan, joined the company. Evan strutted into our department like he owned the place. He was in his mid-20s, straight out of college, and on paper, his resume looked impressive. But everyone quickly realized the truth. His uncle had paved every inch of his career path. Internships at prestigious firms, courtesy of Thomas. Glowing recommendation letters, courtesy of Thomas. The job in our department, courtesy of Thomas. At first, I tried to give Evan the benefit of the doubt. Everyone needs time to adjust. But weeks turned into months, and the reality was undeniable. He was lazy, entitled, and utterly unqualified. He'd miss deadlines, then shrug it off like it wasn't his problem. He'd leave his share of reports half-finished, assuming someone else would clean up the mess. He'd skip meetings, stroll in late, and spend half the day scrolling social media at his desk. Whenever I gently tried to correct him, he'd laugh it off. "Relax, Aunt Rachel," he'd say with a smirk, using that obnoxious nickname he invented because I was always hovering like a family babysitter. Never mind that we weren't related. I wanted to shake him, but instead, I picked up the slack. Again and again. It wasn't just me. Everyone in the office knew Evan wasn't pulling his weight. People whispered about it in the break room, rolled their eyes when he walked past, and joked about how Evan's uncle must be really proud of all his PowerPoint slides. But no one dared challenge it openly. After all, Thomas was their boss. I thought eventually Thomas would realize it too, that at some point, Evan's incompetence would outweigh his family loyalty. I thought if I just kept doing my best, the truth would shine through. Then came the client disaster. It was one of our biggest accounts, the kind of client that could make or break quarterly numbers. I'd spent months coordinating across 5 departments, ironing out every detail. Evan's task was simple. Send a finalized draft of our proposal to client. Just send it. I reminded him 3 times. I even sent him the final version myself. The deadline passed. The client received nothing. By the time we scrambled to fix it, the client was furious, threatening to walk away entirely. The next morning, Thomas called me into his office. His tone was grave, like he was about to deliver a eulogy. "Rachel," he said, "this isn't easy for me, but I have to hold you accountable. You were overseeing the project, and the client feels neglected. That falls on leadership." I stared at him, stunned. "Thomas, you know I handed the draft to Evan." I reminded him. "I emailed you about it. The responsibility wasn't mine." He sighed, doing his best impression of a weary parent. "Look, I can't throw Evan under the bus. He's young. He's still learning. But you've been here long enough to know better. You should have managed him more closely." I felt my jaw drop. "So your solution is to punish me for his incompetence?" He folded his hands, calm as a stone. "I've thought this over carefully. Effective immediately. You're being demoted. Evan will step into your position to gain more responsibility, and you'll report to him." The words didn't register at first. I blinked at him, waiting for the punchline, but there was none. "You're demoting me and promoting Evan?" I finally managed to whisper. Thomas gave me a look of feigned sympathy. "Rachel, you've always been more comfortable doing the actual work than managing. This will let you focus on what you're good at. Evan needs this chance to grow." I walked out his office in a daze, my box of belongings clutched in my arms. My team avoided eye contact. They knew. They'd seen it coming. And there was Evan, standing at my old desk, smug grin plastered across his face like he'd just conquered the world. That night, I sat on my couch and cried until I couldn't anymore. 7 years of loyalty, late nights, weekend sacrifice, holidays cut short, all erased in an instant, replaced by a lazy, arrogant nephew who'd done nothing but ride his uncle's coattails. For days, I considered quitting, walking away from the company I'd given so much to. But then, something inside me shifted. Why should I walk away? Why should I let them take everything I'd worked for and hand it to someone who hadn't earned it? No. If Thomas and Evan thought they could bury my career with nepotism, they were about to find out what happens when you underestimate the woman who built the backbone of their department. I wouldn't storm out. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I would build my case, piece by piece. And when the time came, I'd make sure the truth was impossible to ignore. That's when my quiet revenge began. For the first week after my demotion, I walked into the office every morning with my head held low. I kept my eyes on my computer, did the tasks assigned to me, and avoided conversations. It was humiliating enough to have my former colleagues, the very people I used to lead, now reporting to Evan. And Evan, oh, he relished every second of it. Don't forget Aunt Rachel, he'd smirk. I'll need that spreadsheet by noon. And try not to mess it up this time, yeah? The first time he said it, I nearly snapped. But then something clicked in my head. If I exploded, if I gave him or Thomas even the slightest excuse, I'd be digging my own grave. So I smiled. I nodded. I played along. They thought they'd broken me. But in reality, I had just entered phase one of my plan. I started small. Every email, every instruction, every mistake, I documented it. When Evan forgot to show up for a client meeting, I wrote a polite follow-up email recapping his absence and CC'd Thomas. When he botched a report, I fixed it quietly but saved the original draft with his name still attached. I became meticulous, almost obsessive. If Evan assigned me something unreasonable at 5:30 p.m. on a Friday, I made sure to respond in writing. Per your request, I'll work late to finish this by Monday morning. Always polite, always professional, but always creating a trail. At the same time, I started asking quiet questions. HR forms, policy handbooks, even company bylaws. I dug through everything. I want to know exactly what protections employees had, what records were required, and what grounds existed for disciplinary action. And then I began building the report. At first, it was just a Word document saved discreetly on my home computer. But slowly it grew into a beast, dozens of pages, neatly divided into sections. Section 1, missed deadlines. Every late project, every forgotten assignment, every email chain where Evan had failed to deliver. Section 2, client complaints. Not just a big one that got me demoted, but the smaller incidents too, the polite but firm notes from clients asking why Evan hadn't followed through, the frantic late-night calls I had to fix myself. Section 3, workplace conduct. His late arrivals, his early exits, his blatant disrespect in front of other staff. I even noted the time he called one of our interns sweetheart in a meeting and laughed when she looked uncomfortable. Section 4, favoritism and nepotism. Emails where Thomas covered for him, meetings where Evan was given credit for my work, and the ultimate insult, my demotion, despite documented evidence of Evan's incompetence. Each night, after the office went dark, I'd stay up at my kitchen table with a glass of wine, typing away. With every entry, I felt stronger. The sadness that had once crushed me was slowly being replaced by cold determination. By the time a month had passed, I wasn't just Rachel, the demoted employee. I was Rachel, the woman holding a loaded weapon of truth, just waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger. And that moment was closer than anyone suspected. By the time 2 months had passed, I had an entire arsenal of evidence, a detailed record of every screw-up, every manipulation, every insult. My little report had grown into nearly 70 pages, complete with attachments, emails, and timelines. But having evidence was one thing. Knowing when to use it was another. I didn't want to come across as bitter or vengeful. I wanted this to look like exactly what it was, A professional, fact-based account of one man's incompetence and another man's corruption. The kind of thing that, if ignored, could tank an entire department or even the company's reputation. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. One Friday afternoon, Thomas called a team-wide meeting. Evan strutted in late, coffee in hand, shirt wrinkled, acting like he owned the place. He announced with a smug grin that he would be presenting the new quarterly client strategy to the executives the following week. That was my strategy. I had spent weeks drafting it, polishing it, and prepping it. Evan hadn't touched a single line of it. When he fumbled through the slides, mispronouncing key client names and skipping entire sections, I kept my face neutral. But inside, I knew it was time. That weekend, I finalized my report. I didn't just send it to HR. I went straight to the top, the CEO, Margaret Hayes. Margaret wasn't the kind of leader you bothered lightly. She was sharp, decisive, and famously allergic to nonsense. If you were going to knock on her door, you'd better come prepared. So I attached my 70-page report to a concise cover letter. Dear Ms. Hayes, I am submitting the following documentation as a matter of professional concern. The attached report outlines repeated issues of negligence, favoritism, and misconduct within our department, directly impacting client trust and company performance. While I have attempted to resolve these matters internally, recent developments have left me no choice but to escalate. I hope this information helps protect the company we've all worked so hard to build. I hit send at 2:13 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Then I close my laptop, lay back in bed, and stare at the ceiling. My heart was pounding. Would she even read it? Would it backfire and cost me my job? By Monday morning, I had my answer. At exactly 9:07 a.m., an email appeared in my inbox. Rachel, thank you for your thorough documentation. Please come to my office at 11 a.m. today to discuss further. Confidential. Do not share this communication with anyone. I almost dropped my coffee. She'd read it. She'd actually read it. At 11 sharp, I walked into Margaret's office. She was sitting behind her glass desk, the report open on her tablet. She looked up at me, her eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with calculation. Rachel, she said, I've been with this company for 25 years. I've seen employees complain. I've seen people exaggerate. And I've seen plenty of petty rivalries. But this, she tapped the tablet. This is bulletproof. Dates, times, emails, client feedback. You did your homework. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to, but I couldn't let this continue. For the company's sake. She nodded once. Good. Leave this with me. And don't say a word to Thomas or Evan. I'll handle it. 2 days later, everything exploded. Margaret called a surprise executive meeting. One that Thomas and Evan strutted into, completely unaware of what was about to happen. I was asked to attend as well. The moment Evan started talking about his strategy, Margaret cut him off. Stop, she said coldly. I've reviewed your performance, Evan. I've also reviewed the oversight in your department. Thomas, both of you have shown a complete disregard for professionalism, competence, and this company's values. Thomas stammered, Ma'am, I assure you. But she raised a hand. Save it. I have documentation. The room fell silent. My report was sitting on the screen, behind her. Evan's face drained of color. Thomas looked like someone had punched him in the gut. And then Margaret delivered the blow. Effective immediately, Evan, you are terminated. And Thomas, you're on probation pending further investigation. Rachel, you'll be assuming interim leadership of the department while we sort this out. The silence was deafening. My co-workers glanced between me and the two men who had spent months humiliating me. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap. On the outside, calm. On the inside, my heart was thundering with satisfaction. For the first time in months, justice wasn't just a fantasy. It was real, it was brutal, and it was unfolding right in front of me. The day Evan was fired and Thomas was placed on probation felt surreal. I walked out of that executive meeting with my head held higher than it had been in months. My co-workers gave me small, discreet smiles, the kind of looks that said, finally, someone stood up to them. Evan didn't even last the afternoon. Security escorted him out with his box of belongings. He kept muttering under his breath, blaming me, blaming his uncle, blaming everyone but himself. For a man who had coasted his entire career on family connections, it was the first time he had to face the world on his own. Thomas, on the other hand, tried desperately to save face. The very next morning, he pulled me into a corner of the office. "You think you've won, don't you?" he hissed. His face was red, his eyes bloodshot. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me? To this department?" I met his glare without flinching. "I did what you refused to do. I protected the company from your negligence." He clenched his jaw. "This isn't over." But the truth was, it was over. Margaret's investigation revealed even more than I had expected. Thomas had been funneling opportunities to Evan for years, manipulating promotions, burying complaints, even shifting budgets to cover Evan's mistakes. The paper trail was damning. Within a month, Thomas was quietly asked to resign. His email account was deactivated, his office cleared out, and his name scrubbed from the directory. For a man who once strutted around the office like he owned it, his downfall was absolute. As for me, Margaret called me into her office not long after. "Rachel," she said, folded her hands on her desk, "I don't usually hand out praise lightly, but your work, both your documentation and your leadership, has been exceptional. This company needs people like you." She paused and smiled. "I'd like to formally offer you the director position, not interim, permanent." For a moment, I just sat there in stunned silence. After everything I'd endured, everything I'd lost, the recognition I had once thought impossible was finally being placed in my hands. I accepted, of course, but the promotion wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was a vindication. The knowledge that no matter how much Thomas and Evan had tried to bury me, the truth had risen to the surface. The weeks that followed were a blur of new responsibilities. My team rallied around me with renewed energy, grateful to have leadership they could trust again. Clients who had nearly walked away were reassured, and our department slowly began to heal. Every now and then, I'd hear rumors about Thomas, how he struggled to find another job at his level, how his reputation in the industry was tarnished. And Evan? Last I heard, he was bouncing between short-term gigs, blaming office politics for his failures. I didn't waste time gloating. Life had already delivered the perfect revenge. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think back to that day when Thomas demoted me, when I walked out of his office clutching a box of my belongings, humiliated and heartbroken. If someone had told me then that I'd one day rise above them, stronger than ever, I wouldn't have believed it. But now I know. The truth has a way of cutting through lies, and justice, when it finally comes, is worth every second of patience. This wasn't just about a promotion. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my voice, and my power. And as I stood in my new office, overlooking the city skyline, one thought rang louder than all the rest. They tried to bury me. They forgot I was a seed.